Okay, here we have the delivery from Putoline, who are the distributor in the UK for Kappa products. This is the screen for the little Honda Super Cub, which is the UK version or European version, so you can see the difference with the LED indicators. And of course the rear ones, bit of dust there, and the all-important LED stop light. So anyway, back to the Kappa screen. See, it's got a Kappa mark there, so I guess this sits somewhere around here. And the mounting holes. Now the problem that my friend Quasi had in installing his was several things. First of all, he had parts missing in the parts bag, various grommets and other things missing. I don't suppose there's any instructions with any of this, so there might be. But it says, you can see that quality control 140. We'll see if that's actually true. Honda Super Cub with these, you can notice, very similar numbers, if not identical notes, part numbers to the Jivi system. So these are the part numbers, so I guess the best thing to do first, without boring you, is go through the parts list and make sure that I've actually got all the parts that it says I have. It tells you what tools you need: a 14mm wrench and a 4mm and 6mm hex key. And oh, okay, there you go. It's pretty looks very similar to what Quasi showed on his installation diagram, and no doubt you'd have been far more pleased if you actually had all the parts to assemble it, poor guy. So without further ado, I'm just going to go through the parts and make sure that we've actually got what it says on here before I try and assemble it. So let's come back to you. Okay, well, the first problem I can see, and again this is another problem that Quasi highlighted in his video, is that these screws, which actually screw through the screen, through the grommets, into the receivers, which are here, if you can see that in the diagram, they're normal throughs. They're not screw thread cutting screws, they're bog standard screws, and you have to screw them into the plastic receivers. And as you can see, maybe you can see, that they're not threaded in any way. So unless you really, which is quite amazing, really have a thread tapping device to actually put threads in here, you're going to have a hell of a problem trying to get this actually to screw in. And there's no lead, but let me just see, actually, in saying that, that went in quite easily, and I'm just intrigued to see if that actually is going to cut in there, if I can find the right torque wrench, torque driver, or hex key, should I say. Not quite as organised as our dear friend in the States, but let's just see if that actually does screw in straight. And actually it is very easily. As you can see, I've got no problem in winding that in, so I'm going to wind it out and assemble the rest of it before I try and do that. But that's actually quite soft plastic there, and it did go in very easily, and it has actually cut the thread in the plastic. So let me go through the rest of the parts to make sure that all the parts are in before I try and assemble the thing. Well, as you can see, first of all, it's just started raining, but this is typical for the UK, as you can see. So I'm going to have to pack up and start again. But I'm pleased to say, unlike poor Quasi, I have actually got all the parts. I've just been through the whole lot, and all of them are there. So that's a very good start. But what I am going to do is actually cut the threads into these receivers in turn before I actually try and assemble it. Might be the wrong thing to do, but I'm going to do that anyway. But at least I'm not hamstrung by the fact that there was some plastic parts missing in his. So that's the first good start. Let's see how we get on, but I'm going to have to move my assembly because I'm going to get drowned in a moment. So I'll come back to you. I'm not going to bore you with doing all the screw cutting or thread cutting, but this is the last one. And as you can see with a normal T-bar, it was really quite easy to thread those. It's quite a soft plastic. So that's you can see it's actually wiping some of the colour off there. If I take that out, and that's cut in reasonably well, and it's very tight as well. As I was getting towards the end, it was getting very, very tight. Obviously when you put the screw in, you've got to put it in as straight as you can, otherwise you're going to end up with it all going in crooked. So just look round when you feed it in gently and just keep winding till it stops, which it does. So there you go. Now before I assemble the screen onto the bike, yes, and it's still raining, would you believe, I have got a phone holder because I do use camera database just to make sure that I'm going above the speed limit. They're very hot over here. And also Waze or Google Maps to find where I'm going. So I installed this little rip-off RAM mount. I do have a proper RAM mount, but this is a cheap Chinese thing for about $13 off eBay, and it does come with a little charging port, as you can see. The only problem with this is that I could not find, I pulled all this apart, I couldn't find an easy way to actually attach it to 12 volts. So I rather crudely just cut the cable off. To be honest with you, unlike Quasi, I don't go hundreds of miles on mine. They're all relatively short distances, and my phone will last for a good morning continuous on GPS. But if anybody can tell me how to easily access a 12 volt port on here, so I can wire up a charging system, I'd like to. The only problem with these cheap copy RAM mounts is that they move. It doesn't matter how much you tighten this up, so as soon as I go over a bump, this falls down. Do remember, I can't remember which way it is, yes, this is an opposite thread here. So you wind it in the opposite way, and it should. So I'm winding it clockwise, as you can see, and the whole thing will now come off. So let me just put my spanner down and do that. And as you can see, it tells you to remove the mirror and remove the receiver, so I'm going to do that as well, which is here. And I think this is the one. Oh, goodness me, it's certainly tight anyway. This is normal thread cut, so it's a normal thread, so just anti-clockwise to remove that. Okay, so it tells you to assemble one of the arms. We're following this picture here. We've got the large bolt, you've only got two of those, there's the other one. That's number 3. A flat washer, number 5, so which I've assembled, you can see there. And then the little ferrule, which is here, one of those in there, that's number 8. And then this rubber bung, which actually has the centres in it, but you can see I've taken them out. That goes over, so that now looks like that, and that then gets screwed down with a different wrench, which I'll get out in a minute, the 6mm rather, and mount that to the bike. So let's do that next. Right, so whilst we've got it at that stage, I think I'll assemble the other one now. Again, a repeat of the other side, exactly the same sequence. I've removed the mirror from the other side, and yes, it's still raining here, which I was in the States, so it's nice and dry. So just do that up. And then we'll go to the next stage. Right, I've had to come in because it's really started hoofing down out there. Let's put the other mirror on. 17mm wrench for this, or spanner we call them. I think you call them wrenches out there. Rather interestingly, there isn't a I don't think there's a washer that goes between the top and the bottom, which is a little bit odd. You think there would be, but there isn't. So and these are, I think, left-hand thread. I'm pretty sure they are, but let me sort of guessing upside down. I'm also not so sure I should have that on. Just about to whiz outside. No, I'm not. I should have taken this piece off, so let me do that. Just remove the end bit with 2 spanners, and yes, this is a left-hand thread. So put that on there with the spring washer, exactly the same as the other side, and screw that on. I'm just going to leave them temporarily loose for the moment, and let's see if I've got this all round the right way and see if we can get the screen on. Right, these are the rubber pass-throughs for the screws, and I have to say they're really easy to fit. So obviously just try and make it a little bit soft in your hand before you put it through. Probably put it in some hot water if you wanted to. I guess it's probably the best thing to do, but they seem to go in pretty easy. Probably aided by the fact that the screen has got a bit wet being outside. So there you go. That wasn't exactly difficult. So let me repeat all 4 of those and then we'll go for the rest of it. The next part of the build is these units. You got 4 of these. I think it was one of these that Cosy had missing, or it may have been one of the rubber bungs, I can't remember. I've already cut all the threads in the receiver, no, not on this bike, oops, on the receivers on here. I've wound all the screws into that, so now we're going to try and attempt to put that on there. So let's have a go. Quad's looking at this and laughing his head off because he's an engineer and I'm not, but these are around the wrong way, so I've just got to change these over. Fortunately I haven't done anything up tight, so I'm literally just going to whip them off and swap them round because they're too far apart at the moment. Okay, now we've got the arms round the right way, excuse me, stupid boy. We've now fitted all the ferrules into the rubber bungs, which are mounted through the windscreen of course, and I guess you've got to adjust the distances on these so it sits as reasonably close to that without banging into the headlamp assembly. You don't want to get that all scratched, so I'm going to leave a reasonable gap but not too large so you can see. In fact, I think you're actually restricted even if I move that down to the very bottom. That's going to be the starter for 10, so as you can see, once I've adjusted it, it's going to sit at that sort of height. So I'll need 2 hands. Well, alright, well, let's have a go. Seeing I've already cut the threads on these, I think maybe I'd rather fit the top ones first, just so there's not so much leverage on the plastic. What I really don't want to do is get this far, end up cracking the plastic, and I'd be as peed off as Cosy is. And aren't his videos good? Watching this you can see how good his videos are. See how easy that goes in, by the way, because I've already cut the threads before I assembled it. That would have been really difficult to do if I tried to do it without running them through first before I assembled it on the bike, or on the arms rather. I'm going to sort of try and get this all lined up Again, this is going in easy because I've already cut them. So get those lined up. Definitely a bit of tweaking to do here. So don't tighten all these up tight. If you do, you're just on a complete loser. That's not bad actually. Sure I can get it better though. I think I'm going to put those screws in the bottom ones and then try and line them all up by themselves. I've also noticed that anybody doing servicing on this is going to have to remove this to get to the brake reservoir, which is a bit of a pain, but it's hardly the end of the world. I'm sure if I'd installed several of these, again look how easy that's going on because the threads are cut. And with this one, and that really is, I wouldn't say it's like butter, but it really isn't difficult to screw that in, but enough that you can feel it's not all wobble out. I'm still not going to do it tight at the moment, but that's really quite amazing. Ooh, that isn't amazing. That's how off centre that is. So there's definitely going to be some adjustment here somewhere, because that would really annoy me going down the road with it looking like that. I think it's not too bad. Definitely more gap there, isn't there, than there is on that side. So maybe if I pull this out more that way, that's pretty good. Right, so obviously I've got to tighten that one up. That's what's making it. It's a 6mm, I think, this one. This isn't going to be so easy. Unfortunately, my T-bar, I seem to have lost my 6mm driver. A T-bar driver, they're great, those things. Because I could get in here so easily if I was using that. Anyway, I've also changed the mount for a ram mount because that plastic thing I'm just going to throw in the bin. The old adage, you get what you pay for, never rings true. Yep, that looks pretty good. I'm sure I'll be fiddling around with it for ages, but just get it completely right. And that, yes, I will tighten that up in a minute. And that's a left-hand thread, incidentally, but I'm going to do that when I actually sit on the bike. Well, that's pretty tight. Not too bad, does it? Just do these up. Not going to over tighten them either. Last thing you want to do is split the screen, obviously, goes without saying really, but I'm using my head mounted 1080p glasses, would you believe, but POVs. I've actually got lenses in so I can see, because being an old git I need to wear glasses these days. Well, there you go. How straight is that? Yeah, that's not bad. I think there'd be a slight amount of tweaking, but so there's the bike. Even though it's raining outside, I'm just going to wheel it outside. Probably don't want to go along with that on. So that's the Kappa Screen. You can see Kappa there, which is an alternative to Jivy. There must be some sort of tie-up between the pair of them, because they even use the same part numbers, which is all rather bizarre. It's also slightly cheaper. Oops, let's just do those mirrors up before I wander off down the road and find them flying about everywhere. But that'll be the last. I have to say, whilst I don't like bar end mirrors, because I'm convinced that we're allowed to filter in this country, And I don't think in a lot of states you're allowed to do that in the US. And I just don't want to make the bike any wider than it is. Okay, so I'm going to leave that as it is and use the mirrors, but I'll certainly find if I can find some mirrors with longer arm extensions. I will do. This one. And it's managed to take the ram mount as well. I don't know how expensive they are in the States, but they're horrendously expensive over here. More than $1 for the pound, so we get ripped off. I've also noticed that isn't done up tightly yet, so I'll do that in a second. So there it is. I'm going to have to do a few more adjustments, but there's a little screen. Really didn't take too long, seeing I've never fitted one before. There it is, Super Cub 125. It's got about 200 odd miles on it, nowhere near as many as our friend has. With the Kappa Screen. Came very quickly within a couple of days, and it was well under £100. I've also got the rack, as you can see, in this rather weird little alarm, which is really meant to be a bicycle alarm, but you just undo this, pull the wire out, put it through the wheels, wrap it through an eyelet, and then lock it when you've put this comes off, pull this down and put the cable in, and it's purely a deterrent only. Obviously if they're going to nick it, they could chop through that with their teeth probably. So there it is, that's it, all fitted, all done, bar getting the arms round the wrong way when I first assembled it. I don't think that's bad for me. Thank you very much. And what I didn't do is actually show you what it looks like. Whoops, to drive to the screen, so I'm just going to go up and down my driveway. I really can't be bothered to dress up and go out. I've no idea whether it's going to make any difference to the wind and the rain. But I think it looks quite good. So there you have it. Hopefully it won't fall off. I'm not known for my mechanical skills, as you can see from the video, but I'm quite pleased with that. Oh, be even more pleased if I'd left it in neutral. There you go. So, Super Cub, Jivy copy screen, or Kappa, it must be part of the same company. I'm not convinced that's on straight. I think it's got to go more that way, but I'll have a fiddle about, or maybe it's because the bike isn't actually sitting straight. But I'm very pleased with that. New ram mount as well, or the old ram mount off my Honda Grom that I sold. And that's so much better than that cheap Chinese thing. That definitely won't wobble about and move. And am I delighted with the bike? You bet. It is absolutely beautiful. I'm so pleased I got it. If you're thinking about one, I know they're expensive at $3,000 and a bit or £3,500 here. You can get deals on them, but they really are beautifully made, and I think this will last for years and years. My latest bike is I bought that about 3-4 weeks ago, and this one arrived 2 weekends ago, or rather I went and picked it up. That's my new Royal Enfield Interceptor 650. Very lighter weight and less power than I'm used to, but nice bike, and I love the chrome tank, or the glitter and dust as the marketing department called it. Here's another Chinese copy of a ram mount, but this one's actually quite good. It's got more fingers to hold the phone in, and it doesn't move about. I mean, they really have ripped off the ram. It's not quite as nice, but also got a cable to charge the phone as well when it's there. But that's a lovely machine. So there it is, Honda Cub with the screen. And sorry it's nowhere near as professionally presented to you as Crosby. He really is he's the master at bike videos on Super Cubs and his lovely free-wheel Can-Am. Okay, since fitting the screen earlier in the rain, I wasn't too happy with it. There were a few things that I didn't like. For example, I had the RAM mount, a mirror mount fitted to the actual mirror stem, which is where of course it used to be, but it was mounted here. The problem was the thread in this bolt was so short that maybe it would have unscrewed, and it didn't take much to move this because I couldn't get enough grip on the top bolt and the bottom. So I thought, well, why don't I move it along here, because this bolt is extremely long, far longer than the mirror mounted bolt, and as you can see, I think that looks a lot neater. The only slight downside is I can't see these, but believe me, I know where the horn and the indicators are, even though they're different to one of my other bikes here. So the other big advantage, which I didn't notice before, by fitting this these extension arms on, of course, to fit the mirrors, has got the added bonus they've pushed the mirrors out well over 1.5 inches out either side. So as you can see, maybe you can, it pretty well misses my elbows, even with my motorcycle jacket there. That's a lot further out, so that's good. The other thing is, it did take a little bit of adjusting to get this absolutely straight. I think you'll agree that looks good. So overall, I'm very pleased. Slight readjustment on this screw, that wasn't quite right, so I had to, the cap was not on straight. It is quite difficult to put these screws in because they haven't tapped the threads. When you do force them, which you know I did off the bike, off the screen, to try and get them as straight as you can. If they're a little bit at an angle, you'll have problems lining that up, and this one was slightly out, but I've managed to re-screw it back in again. So there it is. That's just a little update. If you do want a mirror mount RAM for your phone here, that really does fit well now. That's it.